almost all abductees, and this is something you're not going to read on the internet. It's going to be brand new. So fasten your seatbelt. It doesn't matter whether you were abducted by an alien or think you were, or if you've seen an alien, been near a UFO, had an encounter, even if you weren't abducted, the alien downloads apps and people. I use the word app because people can understand that better. It's within hearing range of us. And he said, I want to know how old you think the alien, how far they are ahead of us. And I said, well, Doc, I'd really rather not answer that because if I do, I said, I'm probably going to get laughed off of the set. And he said, he looked at me and everybody was looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And he said, I want to know what you think. I don't care what everybody else thinks. And I said, the alien is no more than 15 to 15 years ahead of us. And everybody on that set, Mike Vera, Stephen, the producer, director, everybody, laughed, the biggest belly laugh you could ever imagine. Everybody was laughing except me and one other person, Dr. Bob Lloyd. And when he started to speak, everybody shut up. He said, oh my God, those are the exact figures I came to.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link to the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5. What has kept your drive and over the years to keep moving forward? What's that spark in you, Daryl?
Well, I was a captive audience in this phenomena at age 4. I became an abductee, and I've learned a lot about the alien and what they're up to since then by using a lot of different techniques. But the bottom line is that I know what a lot of these people are going through, and so I'm willing to help them to get through it, so to speak, and to navigate this nightmare of a field.
Mm-hmm. And a while ago, I mentioned the Dancer UFO Conference. Whatever happened to that conference, Derrel? Will that conference ever come back?
We're working to do another one. Hopefully that will happen this year. It will be probably Aliens and Cowboys or something like that. It'll be a little different name, but it'll be another fun conference. We had Native Americans at the last one, and we'll probably bring them again this time.
That was I really enjoyed myself down there. I really did. I had a blast. I think it was you, Mike Barra, Jimmy Roberts. It was several people, and but what other types, before we get too much into the conversation, things we'll be discussing with your research and stuff, what other types of conferences are here in the South? Like, I don't know of any in Louisiana, and that one in Texas is the only one I've ever been to in Texas. I normally go to the Ozark UFO Conference there in Eureka Springs. I've been there a handful of times.
That's the one that Dr. Carla Turner used to go to speak to all the time. And she was a buddy of mine for many, many years. And but I just got back from a conference in North Carolina, and did that one as a Bigfoot conference, really, but they wanted a UFO guy there too. So I keynoted that one. And now I'm working on this weekend, literally, in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'll be at Comic Palooza, which is like Comic-Con. It's huge, absolutely monstrously huge thing, from everything from comics, Marvel, you name it, gaming, everything you can imagine. And they're going to have me speak on the alien implants and actual UFO evidence. And on the second day, I'll do another presentation on ghosts, aliens, and demons, and angels, and the signatures of each one, why they're all different.
Where exactly, where's that conference at?
That's going to be in Houston, Texas. It's going on this weekend.
Man,
it is huge.
I can't make it this weekend. Man, see, I'll catch up with you after the show, or maybe you have like, if people want to, how can people get informed over these things? Because there's so many out there. It's almost like there needs to be a newsletter with all the conferences.
There should, but you can go to our website generally, and it'll list where I'm going to be or what I'm doing, and so it kind of give you an idea of what up. And at the end of August, I'll go to Scotland, then I'll go to Manchester, and speak at the big conference there. It's one of the biggest conferences in England. And then after I speak there for 2 days, then I'll leave, fly to Istanbul, Turkey. Then I will go to Göbekli Tepe at that point, and then Karan Tepe, and then lecture and do some things there. And then we'll fly right back, and I'll do another presentation. Then I'll be off for 4 or 5 days and just tour Turkey at that point.
That's why I said a while ago, what's that fire in your gut? Because you're going strong, and you've been doing this for a long time. I'm not asking you again, but what's in your spirit? What is that? You know what I mean? I know we want to get to the truth, but some things you just, is it instinct?
Well, there's a lot I've learned about the alien, and a lot I know about them, and most of this stuff is not public knowledge to the public. It's just okay. There must be 50 opinions out there on what's going on. Most of the people, in my view, that espouse opinions like that, base that on, they read some books and they've read this, they think that, and so on. Most of my research come from a policing background, is based on evidence, and I like to tell people what I think I know and what I actually do know versus what I can prove, so to speak, if I had to go to court over it. And in most cases, people couldn't go to court, couldn't even get in a courtroom with their evidence, simply because they don't have any. You can't testify in a court of law based on hearsay. I believe this, and that must be the truth. That's not going to work. I require a great deal more than that.
Whenever, I know I've heard you mention it before, and we've talked about it before last year and at the conference there in Houston, but how long exactly have you been researching this? I know your first experience started at the age of 4, but hard-nosed, deep diving research, how long has it been, or what year was that?
I've been doing this over 50 years.
So whenever you first started looking into it, researching and stuff like that, Derrel, how did your friends, family, colleagues, even I guess your colleagues with the company, well, how did they all react whenever you started looking into this stuff?
Well, most of the time I kept the information private, and would work with abductees and help them in scenarios to navigate what was going on with them. And the few people who did find out early in the 80s about what I was up to and so on, it was the giggle factor was a big one in there, but again, I started going after evidence, and this is something that no one knew anything about back in the 70s and 80s, going after the idea of alien implants and this sort of thing. That was just completely unheard of. No one believed there was any evidence. And Goodnight, even MUFON, back in the 80s, early 90s, didn't even believe in abductions. I mean, if you mentioned that to them, they thought you were mentally ill. So they've changed their attitude a great deal too.
So, and that's kind of course, that's your forte with abductions, everything involved around abductions, whether it be alien implants, trace materials, and things like that, and helping people deal with the trauma, and that's very important, because I know I don't believe it's all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to abductions. A lot of people out there are like that there are no bad ETs, no bad aliens, and that they're all benevolent. And I don't think so. I think it might be a mixture, but I don't think there's one or the other.
I agree. It's a mixed bag out there, and again, these ideas are perpetrated by people who simply read books and listen to stories and therefore come up with their own theories. That doesn't really mean anything. If you find out, for instance, in my research, somebody asked me the other night in a scientific program, they said, well, where do you think the aliens actually come from? And I said, do you mean where does the DNA actually originate? He said, yeah. I said, planet Earth. Well, that's outrageous. And I said, that's my whole point. People come up with ideas because they don't have a clue. So they must be from outer space. A lady asked me today, I said, where do you think they're from? She said, well, they're from Zeta Reticuli. I said, how do you know that? Well, they said so. I said, and if an alien told you that and was lying, that would mean he was telling the truth. Why do I not believe that? I said, my point is that if the DNA is provably from planet Earth, why would I think he comes from Zeta Reticuli? I said, the problem is people use only one hat, so to speak, to look at this phenomena. And the hat is the UFO hat. It's a hat we all wear, and it gets fooled real easy. All you got to do is have somebody important stand up and say a whopper, and everybody buys it as if it's true. So they won't examine it, they don't check it. I said, I use 7 different hats to evaluate, like for instance, when you ask these questions about the alien or whatever, I have 7 different hats or 7 different sets of ears or eyes that are listening and watching to see which answer I need to give. And based on what I see in the person asking the question, that's generally the hat that's going to give you the answer. Because if you can't deal with the medical, the scientific, the intelligence level of information, then I'll put the UFO hat on and answer it that way. Because the UFO hat's that's generally the hat that most people wear. Nothing wrong with it. The problem is it just gets fooled a lot. And it just buys into all kinds of stuff. I mean, it doesn't know any other views other than the UFO views that are given out there. It doesn't have a big critical thinker, so to speak. In other words, if you look at the alien as with a medical hat, nothing else, read no books, just look at the 7 primary alien characters that show up: the Nordic, the praying mantis, all these different ones that people report in their events. If you look at it medically and nothing more, you come up with a totally different view than Zeta Reticuli. That doesn't work. When you look at for instance, you look at praying mantis, why would praying mantises be 7 foot tall on Zeta Reticuli? How do we know there are any praying mantises on Zeta Reticuli? If you were going to manufacture an alien race and call it the mantis beings, you could go to planet Earth and find several hundred species of praying mantises right here. You could genetically modify them right here. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody did. You say, well, how about the Nordic? Well, okay, let's take a wild guess here. I'm going to take a wild guess. The Nordic, he probably didn't come from Zeta Reticuli. He probably comes from Norway. I don't know. I'm taking a wild guess here. That's the reason they use the word Nordic. because of the similarity. Maybe the DNA is human and it comes from that particular lineage. The point is that if you look at every one of these entities, every one of them, you find the DNA comes from here. And the question is, why would somebody do that? Well, obviously, to fool you, to make you think that it came from Zeta Reticuli or some other distant planet you'll never be able to get to and disprove in any way, shape, or form. But the fact is, there's a lot of subterfuge in the UFO phenomena, and that's just the way it works. And there's a lot of harmful things that go on in it. And people, a lot of people don't know about it, and the few that do know about it try to keep it quiet because you're being an alarmist. No, I'm just I got my other hat on. That hat is not afraid to talk about whatever is out. Evidence is evidence. It has nothing to do with opinion. Opinions don't mean anything to me, including my own.
Well said, Daryl. And so I guess since the main talking point for tonight is, of course, with your abduction research and just the abduction phenomena in general. So what's new, I guess, in the world of abductions, Derrel? Because I've been hearing a lot of talk amongst others in the UFO community that abductions have seemed to have halted for some reason or another. I interviewed a researcher last summer, about the same time I interviewed you last summer, that he said that there haven't been any abductions in the past 20 years. I don't attend to agree with that. I don't have any proof, of course, either one, because I'm not wearing your hats with that type of research, even though I do my own armchair type of research here at home. But either one or multiple things are going on here. The aliens have evolved and or have become smarter over the years in conducting their clandestine operations. The other thing is that abduction research is not in its heyday anymore because we've lost people like Bud Hopkins, John Mack, Dr. Carter Turner, Dr. Roger Lear, Barbara Bartholick, Leo Sprinkle, and that's just to name a few. And the only person that we really have now who is still currently active within the alien abduction research is you. So the alien abduction researchers from the past to the present has always been a short list of researchers. And you are one of the only OG, one of the original guys from back in the day, alien researchers that is currently involved in the alien abduction phenomena. So with all of that being said, Derrel, I believe, or I think alien abductions are still very strong and active, whether it's by some rogue element within our government, aliens, or both. Since the list of alien abduction researchers is few and far between, the victims of abductions do not know where to go. And or people like you that are left, I'm speculating, of course, have your hands tied and doing the best you can, but it's hard being one of a few left to take in all the cases. Am I accurate or not in reading all that correctly, Derrel?
Well, we have 2,000 open cases that I've worked on, and I've been interviewed tens of thousands of people in these events. So when I tell people something, I generally can pretty much say "thus saith." I mean, it's a true story when I get to that point. And the fact is, the alien phenomenon is still ongoing. It's robust. It hasn't slowed down. It isn't any better. One of my abductees called the other day. We were getting her ready to do another surgery for 2 implants in her leg, and she reported an alien right outside of her house a few days before I called, and she had several abduction events. And this is a very credible person in the medical community, very educated, very sharp, not given to story and that sort of thing. And her case is remarkable. And but by and large, the real big answer to your question is most of my work is I haven't really discussed with people. Everybody thinks that I'm the alien implant guy, and or the abduction guy, or something like that. The fact is, they don't know most of my work, and I've kept my work private for quite a while for a number of reasons, and I'll let that out later. But the main thing is that a lot of my work is going to be when it gets out, it's going to surprise a lot of people, and there'll be some people really screaming because they'll say, "Well, that's not what so and so said, and that's not what this person said or what that person said," and generally speaking, when people tell me stuff like that, I already have discussed that with those particular people at large. I used to. I could give 100 stories, but I won't. But I mean, I've spoken to John Mack and others. He asked me right off the bat. He said, when I met him in Istanbul the last time, 22 years ago, I guess it was. He said, why does it always get contactees and you always get abductees? And I said, actually, I get both, John. I said, the question you should be asking is, why are you getting contactees for the most part? That's the question you should be asking. And he says, well, why do you think that is? I said, out of great respect for you and your Pulitzer Prize writing and all of that, I said, I want to throw some information out and hopefully it'll be useful. And he said, fire away. And I said, one of the reasons you get contactees and they stay contactees is because you're making a huge mistake, in my opinion. He said, what's that? I said, you're hypnotizing the person's screen memory. If you hypnotize the screen memory, all you're going to get is contacteeism. What you do, in effect, when you hypnotize a person and you get their screen memory and not their actual memory, you're going to miss the real story, number one. Number two, you're going to basically create a contactee simply by the fact that you're working with them and that's what they remember under your hypnosis. I said, second, if you turn around and hypnotize them again and again and again and again, you'll find that story will be never ending. Now, you and I both know, I said, they weren't abducted for thousands of hours. Why would you get this an endless story like that if you re-hypnotize them over and over? And they keep telling you about being in the school of higher consciousness or whatever. I said, my point is that when you hypnotize a person over and over and over, it activates what we refer to as a screen dream. A screen dream is a never-ending story that isn't even true. I think the abductee won't know the difference because they believe everything you say came out of the burning bush. And if you say that's memory, to them it is. And anyway, I'll finish this up a little bit. During our second group of implant surgeries, a lady came into a room where I and Roger Lear were, and she identified herself as a PhD at Harvard, and she was one of John Mack's team. I said, okay. She said, I'm watching all this stuff, and I just think it's a big bunch of bull. I said, okay. Of course, Roger took it real offensively, and he was ready to fight her. I said, leave her alone. Let me handle it.
About what year was this, Derrel?
This was 1996.
I just like little details like that.
96.
Okay.
We were doing a second set of surgeries.
I'm trying to paint a picture of, so.
So we're in a hotel room and she's lambasting, and so I said, okay. And she says, that don't bother you? I said, not in the least. She says, why? And that's, well, because it doesn't make any difference what you think. I said, the facts stay whatever they are. You can't change them, and I can't either, simply because we think differently. And anyway, she said, well, I'm going to go now. I said, fine, see you later. And she shut the door, and Roger started to get mad and cuss and going. I said, wait, just be quiet. And all of a sudden you hear this knock on the door again, and it was her. And she opened the door. She dropped her knapsack down to her feet, breaks out and starts crying, says, I think they're going to get me again. Oh my God, what are we going to do now? And she begged me not to tell John Mack that story. Now, I wonder why that is. So anyway, I told her I would never relay it to him, and I never did. And she said, I'm moving out to California, and I think they're going to get me again. And I said, it's highly likely they are. And And I said, with your current belief system, I said, there's not a whole lot you can do except, kind of just take it. And I said, if you want to change your mind about some stuff and do something different, let me know. Otherwise, I pray for you and wish the best for you. And anyway, she gave me a big hug and left. And Roger looked at me and said, now what in the world was that all about? I said, that is a contactee coming to a person with that belief system realizing that that belief no longer is going to work. You better have something else loaded, so to speak. So I had different opinions with different, and it's not a matter of picking on people. And I told John Mack the same thing. I said, I have great respect for you and personally and everything else. I said, but you're new to this field, so to speak. And your credentials give you a great deal of gravitas, but it doesn't kind of mean anything in the field. I mean, you're out here dealing with people who got experiences that are bigger than your inquiry, so to speak. And it may take you a while to figure that out. But anyway, we went on and on for quite a while. And anyway, and I've had discussions with, I'll give you one last example, Bud Hopkins. When I was in Marseille, France, 1993, I think it was, or 94. My wife was with me, and she and several investigators from the UK were sitting in the hotel watching me and Bud outside because he didn't want everybody to hear it. So we're talking and everything, and it's a father-son talk, and I didn't get to be the daddy. So I sit there, listen to him, and he says, well, I like the way you're handling your research. And I said, okay. I didn't know that you had been watching. And he says, and very respectful to him, and I always have been for everybody. And I said, so what is it you disagree with? He said, well, it's this fluorescent stuff. That's a bunch of bull. He said, people painted that stuff on themselves. I said, okay. Why do you think that, Bud? Well, it's outrageous. And I said, okay. I said, my wife could see through, and she could barely hear through the glass. And she had her own opinion of what was going on out there, and so did the others. So I said, so what was wrong with the fluorescence? He said, they painted themselves. I said, well, Bud, if they did that, they had to know the exact nanometer length. They had to know exactly what coloration. They had to know that it couldn't wash off. There's a lot of things you have to know before you can fake something. These people didn't even know it existed. Well, forget that. Let's talk about something else. I said, okay. What do you want to talk about? The protein allergies you developed. It's outrageous. There's nobody in the field's ever discovered anything like that. I said, has anybody looked? And he said, what do you mean? Did you look for fluorescence with a black light? No, we never found any. I said, you can't see it, Bud, without a black light. It's invisible. Oh, well, the protein allergies, that's nobody knows anything about that. It's not true. And I said, well, Bud, that's I had a former professor from Purdue to peer review me, and she went through 35,000 dental people and instructors to find out the protein allergy is so rare that they don't even check you for it at a dentist office ever. They just don't. I said up to a third of our people in one small survey had that protein allergy. That's equivalent to 3 out of every 10 astronauts going to have that rare drug allergy going into the space program. He said, well, that's incredible. That's right. Nobody's found that. I said, did you check for protein allergy? No. Then that's why you're not finding it. Anyway, he was very gracious and said, would you like to, I'm going to investigate a case this afternoon. I'd like for you to sit in with it. I said, great. So I sat in and I listened to him, never interrupted, never even asked a question, didn't want to be intrusive in any way. And finally, at the end, this well-to-do French couple were sitting there, husband and wife, and he said, Derrel, would you like to ask any questions? I said, just one, if I may. I said, do either of you have a rare drug allergy to procaines? Xylocaine, Novocaine, lidocaine, etc. And both of them turned their heads and looked at each other, looked at Bud and looked at me and said, both of us do. I thought he was going to fall clean out of his chair. So there's a lot of internal, if you didn't discover it, it can't be real, so to speak. And anyway, that's that. Some of the get-togethers are really funny. I like it. I enjoy everybody. I can't think of anybody out there I don't like.
So you brought up the black light, and you're going to show us a few things here in just a moment. But this was from 2007. I'm going to try to share the screen. You see here. Just going to play just maybe a minute or two of it. And this, I've probably watched this, I don't even know, a handful of times, Daryl. Let me see here. All right. This is you at the what comp? It was MUFON LA then. Now they go by UPARs, I believe.
Yeah.
Was it MUFON LA back then?
MUFON LA. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay. And this is remarkable. Before we go into some of back about the black light, trace evidence, and all that, I just want to play just a few minutes of this. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on this. But this is just remarkable. This is off UPAR's YouTube channel. This is UPAR's YouTube channel. Title is Daryl Sims, October 16th, 2007, Physical Evidence Cases.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Can you hear it, Daryl?
Just barely, yes.
Move toward the light. Toward the light. Would you hand me that if you would there, sweetie. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Let me see.
Yes, that's the one.
There we go.
Most of it is not. Most of what I'm showing you are real cases that we had, but it is not. It was placed on her by me. No alien did this. That's all we want to say. Okay. So what we're going to show first is.
So you're just making an example right here.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Just an example.
Yeah.
This
so everybody knows that.
fluorescent pattern was found on a doctor of all people, an abductee in Phoenix, Arizona. She looked at me and said all kinds of colorful metaphors. Besides the term, what is it? I said, I don't know. I said, but that is a procedural technique. That is not by casual conduct. They didn't touch her, leave 3 little marks up there. That is a procedure. I actually think I have some sense of what I think it means, but I have no proof of what it is at this point. So we're still working on that. We have another one here. This little dot that you may see here is right over a vein. It's usually that little dot of bright green fluorescence is what comes back out of a needle after the needle is removed from literally from the vein where it's injected.
That's remarkable.
We don't know what it is yet, but we do have some samples. We are prepared to send these up. We finally got some money. For those of you who complain, said you can see a bunch of, it's almost like somebody smudged something on her neck. This is usually found in a bright pink pattern. That pattern is whenever you're encouraged, forced, or however it happens, to hold one of the little fetus type creatures with large buggy eyes. Its head is placed up there. It's from apparently the saliva.
Mm.
Now we never tell these women what to look for, and when they say it was just a dream, and I know it was, but they made me hold it. I didn't want to.
Mm.
You'll find the fluorescence on her hand, the same color, just as you will right on her neck, the same exact place. So give it up for the actress stuff.
Wow. So I don't even know what to say. I know that was you were just making an example, but this is real. I can't tell how many times I've watched that presentation from 2007, the MUFON LA, which is UPARS now, UPARS on YouTube channel. I get the link to that in the description for everybody to check out. It's all of his conferences, especially the one I watched a couple years ago, and Houston were remarkable. But since 2007, when you made that presentation, what before we because I know you're going to show us a few things here in a moment. Since then, with your research, with the trace evidence and that things like that you're showing up underneath the black light, how many years is since 2007? 15?
15 years.
15. So in the past 15 years, what have you learned? Would you add anything to that? What have you learned since then? Um, is that phenomenon with the evidence under the black light? Is it? Have you seen a lot more since then?
Sure, we've seen a lot more.
Or since that presentation, is there anything you would like to add or change? Because I'll give the link in the description. Everybody can check it out. It's remarkable.
Well, the fact is that every conference I go to, they always ask the same question: when are you going to get the big answers for all this? And I said, well, the test on that fluorescence alone runs $14,000 each. When you give me the money, I'll be able to answer your question very rapidly. And of course, no one's come forward with the money. So all this comes out of my own pocket, and so the research is slow because I'm not a rich guy. But the bottom line is that the fluorescence, there's three kinds of it. I only mentioned two there. One is a casual contact when they touch you on the hand, as an example. They'll leave a fluorescent like 3 flesh and fingers on your hand, as an example. That's casual contact. Another type of fluorescence we would see on people would be like the 3 tick marks that were shown on the line above it on the lady's arm. That those 3 4 marks really is from a procedural. It's from a piece of equipment that's been touched by them, and leaves this fluorescence of them on you from the equipment. We have had one astounding case by a police officer, and the wonderful thing about that, it's one of the rare cases I've ever seen where the alien actually came after somebody 3 times within 10 days. It's just real unusual, very unusual. But you can see the fluorescence on her in 3 different layers of consistency. A chroma is an example. It's brighter in the latest one. The second one is lighter. The third one is lighter. And you can see the equipment and actual touch of them on her in each of these events. I was absolutely blown away by it. I made a little, like a PowerPoint, a continuous PowerPoint on that thing. And it is just stunning is the only way I can describe it. And it's a police officer. And I think I showed it while you were at that last conference. And the interesting thing, the police officer was in the room. The police officer flew all the way from the state they were in
at that conference, Derrel?
In that conference.
Wow.
Just to watch that presentation, to see what I had found about that particular case. True story.
Wow. Oh, and you mentioned 3 marks. I have something I want to pull up here before we go. You show us some stuff that you have. This was from I don't remember, a year or 2 ago. I don't remember. I woke up one morning and I just want to know, have you ever seen anything like this, Derrel? This was on my left shoulder, I believe, and I've never had it since. And I don't have real, well, my wife I don't know where this came from. Let's see if I can pull it up. Share screen. Boom. All right. Can you see that?
Yes.
And I'm going to find another one that I contrasted a little bit more.
Good.
Let's see. So, have you ever seen anything like that?
I have.
It's kind of like 3 there, but it's got some other things. But I don't have cats. I do have dogs, but they don't. I woke up and it was burning. I woke up one morning and it was burning almost like a bee sting. A wall.
Yes.
Oh, no, it was like a hornet sting.
Mhm.
Like those, you live in Texas, you know how them things are.
I do.
So elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I don't know.
I'm not saying that was anything
Send them
paranormal.
to me and as big a resolution as you can, and let me play with it as well, and let one of our pathologists look at it as well. But I've seen something similar to that. I don't know it's the same thing. We need to examine it closely. But in the one that I have seen that's similar to it, it was an individual telling me that he had been uh, touched by, grabbed by a reptile. And I said, well, what convinces you of that? He said, well, look at these marks and all that. And he said, I remember it and so on. And I said, okay, tell me more about it. And he did. And I could look at the bruisings and everything on it and see, I could tell that had occurred probably no later than a night or two at the most ago, just by looking at the bruisings themselves. And they had a claw-like, long razor claw-like marks on his arm, and it was pretty horrific. It caused him some pain. It was quite large, and he was absolutely convinced that that's what it was. And of course, I said, well, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but based on what I'm looking at, it's pretty significant. That's the only thing that I've seen that looks close to that.
And the reason why I asked, because before we go too much into this conversation, that's why I love doing these 2-hour interviews. We can just talk about, we can just throw a lot into the picture here. And I have security footage of where I live, and I've had a lot of weird things here. I don't know. I need to look into the land. It could have been old. I live near the Washita River. Washita River is a couple miles away. It's not too far. Let's see if I can screen share this. All right. Watch, it's going to start in your top right corner. Your top right corner. This is all far one of our security cameras. I believe it's the top right. No, it'll come from the bottom.
You're talking about that sphere?
Yeah.
Across the car?
That orb. Yeah. Okay. I thought there was another one from the top right. And guess what, Daryl? Play it again. We'll go back and forth with the slider here. Bugs, you can see bugs on these cameras.
Sure.
Bugs, these cameras, they do not set off the motion detector. This put alert on my wife's phone while she was getting ready for work that morning. This did. Yes. Bugs, maybe on the next footage, you'll see a bug. They do. We see them all the time at night. They don't set off the motion detector. Okay. And let me, this last one, let me see. This is the side of the house. This is our other security. That first one I just showed you, it was going towards this way on this camera. So I'm getting one steady. This is the same orb, or whatever it is. And right here, I don't know if you can see, it's almost, that's where my baby's, this is my office where I'm talking to you right here. And this is to the right there is my 6-month-old daughter. That's her room. And it goes up and it looks like it kind of goes down or right over. There's a reason why I'm bringing this up. This also set off the motion detector. Bugs do not do this. I'm telling you, bugs don't do this on our motion detector or on our cameras. Right here is her room. Slide it back and forth. Okay. The reason why I bring this up, Daryl, before we go any further, the day after, or that the same day, I believe it was the same day. I came home from work because my parent or my in-laws, my wife's parents, they watch the baby throughout the day, and I get off work earlier than my wife, so I leave the in-laws and they leave. And when I went to go wake her up in that room, she was making these clicking sounds. She's never made these clicking, almost like a, and this was probably a month ago, maybe month and a half. She might have been 4.5, 5 months old. And people like you and others that I've researched, or that I have been following for a while, I believe I've heard you and other researchers talk about that clicking sound is what some of the certain types of aliens create. I've heard the Greys do that. I'm not saying that this is anything paranormal. I don't know. It's just, I find it strange that that same day, later in the day, or that was that afternoon when she was making the clicking sounds. This was those video clips that I showed you was early in the morning. And it's just weird that same day that she's making these clicking sounds. She's never made them before. They could all be nothing there, nothing paranormal, nothing. Maybe, well, I'm bringing that up with the clicking sounds because is she emulating what she heard? Or I don't know. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, she could have been. My first thought is she could have been emulating what you heard from a relative or someone. It's impossible that there's an entity there. That of course is possible. The interesting thing I saw in the footage, where I'd like to look at the footage in much more detail, is that the footage went from perfectly round to disc-like when it got to the edge of your house. So whatever it wasn't an orb in that sense of the word. It was, if it was an orb, it was flattened on one side. And that was most interesting. I've not seen that before. So that was rather interesting to me.
This is
generally
I'm sorry, go ahead, Daryl. I mean, interrupt.
Generally, when you see something like a basketball size disc or object or something like that, if it's generally hard edged, or a solid object, in other words, or hard edged, you can see a solid edge on it. Generally, that's a probe, and it's an actual something coming out from a UFO to spy on stuff. Generally speaking, when you see a sphere like this, if it's fuzzy edged and if it's real, all things being equal, generally it's an entity in transit.
And that's why I'm bringing this up to you, because you've been doing this so long, Derrel. And this is my first child. My wife's first child. She's a product of in vitro IVF, because I'm 37 and my wife's about to be 39. And just like whenever you said, whenever you're 6-year-old kid, you're I believe 6 years old, whenever they get involved. I'm not saying that my daughter is involved with anything. I don't know. I don't have any proof except for what I just showed you. But then that pisses me off. You know what I mean?
Well, the purpose of that might not have been against the child at all. It might have been just to be checking in on you, so to speak, and what's going on, if it was in fact alien related.
Yeah,
so that would be my first. But obviously, you watch your child, and as she grows up, you'll get a pretty good indication.
And before we move forward, I found the other one I meant to show you. This was like a couple months ago. This was the very first one that appeared. Share screen. This is one that's going to appear from the top right, and it set off the motion detector once again. Like I said, but we see bugs all the time on our cameras. They don't set off motion detector. and it's going towards, you'll see it go towards the left around the other camera, but we didn't see it on the other camera, but her room again's over there. So I don't know.
Well, the main thing is just
you see that bug? You can see that
yeah.
bug.
Oh yeah, you can see bugs.
That, yeah.
Yes, sure.
Watch. See the bug.
Sure.
Right there. Boom. Those don't see that all the time. They don't sit another one. They don't set off the motion detector.
No.
But yeah, I just wanted to show you that because you've been around this field for a long time, and I'll try to get my wife to somehow, she's probably got the better, I'll try to find the best quality and send it to
highest
you.
resolution you got would be best.
I will. And so you got some things that you'll like to show us. You take the floor, Derrel. I'm always here. I want you to take the floor. Where do you want to go? The black light with the hand, or implants, whatever you want.
Let's look at some. Let me turn my light off here and let me show you what the black light looked like on the alien's hand. I'm going to use a small black light, which you can get on our website because it's far easier to. My black light costs $500. It'll find blood on the shroud of Turin. Since there are not very many shrouds of Turin, and you don't need a $500 investment, you can spend $5 and get a black light that will show you the green fluorescence on the hand of the alien.